At 19 years old, I discovered what would be my true calling, my passion in life. I fell in love with music. And I was exposed to music from an early age. I grew up in a musical family, but it didn't really connect on the same level until I was 19 and in college and was exposed to worship music. And there was something about it that just woke something up in me, and I had to constantly have a guitar in my hand. I was constantly trying to learn. And I got to a point where I could play 2 songs very poorly, I might add, but I could play and sing 2 songs. And one weekend I went to visit my grandma, and I'll never forget, I played these songs for my grandma because she's safe. She's my grandma. She's not going to judge me. And she asked me as soon as I was done, "Josh, if I ask the pastor tomorrow if you can play those songs in church, will you do it?" And I had a complete moment of panic because I did not want to play in front of anyone. I knew that I didn't know what I was doing, but at the same time, this was grandma, so I couldn't really say no. And that next morning, I got up when they called me, just shaking, with a guitar in hand, and stumbled my way really, really poorly through these 2 songs that I knew. And it was not a grand moment. It wasn't like a massive crowd of people, but something turned on like a light switch in me. And I knew at that moment that this was what I want to do with my life. And since that day, I've spent over 2 decades writing, recording music, touring, a lot of time out on the road. And it all started with that encouragement from my grandmother, my sweet grandmother, who would love anything I did. But God gave me a sense of direction out of that. And what I've learned over that 2+ decades is it wasn't all based on my talent. It was never based on how smart I was or what I knew. But more often than not, what kept me going, what kept our band going, has just been the kindness of others. Over and over and over, we've been shown kindness that kept us moving forward. We were given an 87 Ford school bus by some people, and this bus was painted prison gray. It had no AC, no heat, bad shocks. It went 50 miles an hour on a flat road on a good day, but we loved it. And it gave us a chance to keep doing what we felt called to do. We toured for 6 years in this bus all around the country. And something I can tell you about an 87 Ford school bus, at least that one, is that they break down all the time. But just getting that bus was one act of kindness, but keeping that bus on the road would take several acts of kindness from total strangers. I used to get so nervous when we would tour because I knew if this bus breaks down, I know we don't really have money in the bank. I know we're going to be stuck somewhere. But over time, God kept showing me through the kindness of others that He's got our back. I remember one time in Northern California, we were driving through the mountains and we sprung a leak in a radiator hose, and we kept having to pull over every 5 miles, 6 miles, 7 miles to cool this thing down, to add water. And we called the church that we were playing at, told them what was happening. We limped our way there. But I'll never forget, we pulled into the parking lot, and all of a sudden we were swarmed with 10 guys who were popping our hood, who were looking at everything on this bus. Turns out this church was a church full of diesel mechanics. And within 5 minutes, before we even got our gear unloaded off the bus, they had figured out what the problem was. And one of these guys came up to me and he said, "Here's my address for my shop. You pull in here at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm gonna put a new hose on, we're gonna fix it, get you back on the road." And I was already blown away. So we get there and he does exactly what he said it would do. We ask how much and he refuses to let us pay. That was an extreme act of kindness that kept us going for one more day. Another time in Oklahoma, we had an exhaust leak in the bus, and the fumes were literally coming into the area where we sleep, the area where our couches were, so we couldn't keep driving. And we pulled over to a parts store and we're looking for the part, and they don't have it. And this total stranger overhears us. And he says, "Hey, I'm a metal fabricator. You follow me to my shop and I'm gonna fix your bus right now. I'm gonna create a part and I'm gonna get you back on the road safely." Now, the unique thing about those 2 stories is the first one, it was a church. They were presumptively believers. They knew that we were a Christian band, and so they wanted to invest in that. This gentleman in Oklahoma had no idea who we were, what kind of band. He was just showing kindness. We had a need, he could meet it. And again, it kept us going for one more day. The stories are almost endless of people giving us gift cards for fuel and giving us meals when we don't have any money. It just keeps going, and it helps us follow a calling and follow a passion. And ultimately, it helps us do ministry. People see needs and they meet it. And I know that sounds so simple, but it is such a big thing, and we can all do that. We can all show kindness. Life is full of risk, and I think we need to start taking more risk on kindness. See, you can win battles and maybe even wars with hate, with prejudice, with whatever you want, but you win hearts and minds, you win people with kindness. John 13:34 and 35 say this: "A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." In those two verses, Jesus tells us that if you want to dare to call yourself my follower, you better show love. You better be full of love. It better be coming out of your pores. And how you better show love than through kindness? Kindness is imperative. It's not optional. It's something that we absolutely have to do. And you may read that and say, well, okay, I have to show love and kindness to believers, to people in the church. Not at all. You have to show love and kindness to everyone. And Matthew 22:36 through 40 says this: "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." Now, this is a passage where the man asking the question is famously trying to trip Jesus up. He thinks there's no way Jesus can give an answer to this. He'll have to say something like, oh, all the commandments are equal. They all matter just as much. Jesus does not hesitate to cut right to those two. Number one, love God with every fiber of your being. Number two, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two. Now, if you love your neighbor as yourself, if you love them as much as you love you, do you let yourself go hungry if you can help it? Do you let yourself go without shelter? Do you let yourself go without needs met? So that tells me that we need to do the same for others when we can. And neighbor is not just the person who lives next to you, it's anyone around you. If someone is near you and they have a need and you see it and you can meet it, we're called to show kindness in that moment. It is absolutely vital. We like to make a lot of excuses for why we can't offer kindness, why we can't help in the moment. One of them is, you know what, I can't fix the whole problem. I can't fix their whole life, so I'm not going to bother. This is a drop in the bucket. It's not going to matter 2 weeks down the road. And that is just that. It's an excuse. You don't have to fix their whole life. You have to be kind in that moment. You have to meet the need that you can in that moment. Just like when we were touring and on the road, sometimes people giving us one more day was all we needed to keep us on mission, to keep us moving forward, to keep us driven. One more day. For some people, it's one more meal. For some people, it's one simple conversation. You would be surprised how much a loving conversation could do for someone that's hurting. You have to show kindness. You don't have to fix everything. You just have to answer the call in the moment with what you have and what you can. Another one of my favorite excuses that we probably all use is, I don't have enough to make a difference. You know, I can't, again, it's not like I can't fix their whole life. It's right now, I don't have enough to change everything for them. I am barely getting by myself, whether it's financially or whatever. But here's the thing, we all have something to give. Absolutely every one of us. Luke 21:1-4 says this: "As Jesus looked up, he saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. 'Truly I tell you,' he said, 'this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she gave out of her poverty, put in all she had to live.'" I mean, this is a clear example of someone that would have every right to say, I don't have enough by our standards. She gave everything she had, and Jesus says she gave more. So maybe you only have a little, but kindness is still a requirement. And kindness should be cheerful. Giving should be cheerful. We want to help others. We get to make a difference in their life. Even if it's one more day, one more hour, one more meal, whatever that is, we are blessed by that. And this is my favorite excuse of all time. What if they waste it? How many times have you had this conversation about someone who's living on the streets and I don't want to give them money because they'll buy alcohol or they'll do other horrible things, whatever. That's, first of all, we instantly judge. But here's the thing. We waste God's gifts all the time. We take communion weekly here and we talk about his sacrifice on the cross and we remember that. That is the greatest kindness anyone has ever shown anyone. And it is wasted more often than not. And Jesus did not go to the cross saying, I'll do this only if you all accept it and if you all live a life that honors this sacrifice. No, he did it out of complete kindness, love, and care for us. And even as believers, oftentimes we waste that kindness, that grace. We don't live like Jesus has done anything when he's actually done everything. So I guess my challenge to me and to all of us today is to take a risk on kindness. Maybe they will waste it. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe you can't fix their whole life. But if you can make a difference right now, if you can offer them a chance to have a turning point, if you can keep them going for one more day, for one more meal, for one more conversation, whatever that is, what do you have to lose? Take a risk on kindness.